Have you ever eaten something and then felt like so guilty after? Doesn't matter what it was, but you felt this immense sense of guilt? This episode is for you. Welcome to the Intuitive Eating Mama podcast. I'm your host, Jennifer D'Amato. I am an intuitive eating counselor and I'm also a mom to 4. This podcast is not just for mamas, it's for all women who are ready to ditch diets, ditch the scale and food guilt forever, and instead invite peace with food, increase their body trust, and confidence in all of her choices. I believe this show is going to shed some light on sneaky ways diet culture has infiltrated your thoughts, your family, and your well-being. No matter the episode, I want you to walk away feeling informed, inspired, and encouraged. So whether you're taking a walk, washing the dishes, or carting kids around, let's dive into the latest episode on the Intuitive Eating Mama podcast. All right, before we dive any further, I need to just acknowledge that I have been sick for about a week, feeling better, feeling well enough to actually talk. Last week was so rough for that. I'm really glad I had my interview with Jeff Ash to share with you, but I don't like to edit episodes very often. I will have to pause, maybe clear my throat, have some extra water during this one. Just kind of want to give you a heads up if you're like, Jen, where'd you go? Now, at the beginning, I asked a very simple but probably very loaded question. Have you ever experienced food guilt? Now, I know the answer. If you're listening, it's probably yes. How do I know that? Because I have yet to meet an individual. I've talked to a lot of people. I just talked to a lot of people. I talked to a lot of women. I work with a lot of women on this, and I've yet to find someone who's never experienced food guilt. Now, I don't know if you've ever kind of dug into this on your own and looked at like what foods you feel most guilty. But again, I'm going to take a little leap here and say it's something with sugar. Maybe it's something that has already been deemed unhealthy. I don't know. I'm thinking potato chips, tortilla chips, whatever it is, right? You probably have foods that you think, I shouldn't have this. I shouldn't have that much of this. These are unhealthy. Therefore, you feel guilty if you have them. And if you have them in what appears to be excess, right? You have a lot of it. You maybe feel like you've over-consumed it. The guilt is just as over-consuming as the food feels. Like it feels overwhelming. It feels like it's weighing you down. I think the guilt often can feel worse than the digestive issues if you overate something. Like if you ate so much, your stomach didn't feel great. But the guilt that comes with that, it can be so much more weighted, so much heavier, and last a heck of a lot longer than any digestive upset that you have. It can usually last into the next day or days. It might show up as trying to restrict food in the future. It could show up as over-exercising to, quote unquote, make up for what you ate. Food guilt's really powerful. I was actually just having a conversation with my oldest about guilt, about that emotion. Someone had said something that was really awful and it was eating them alive. Like it was really weighing on them. This has nothing to do with food. But I said, guilt is that emotion that will just eat at you. And you might have to go back and apologize and say something and try to make things right. Guilt is really, really powerful. Now think about that in the context of eating. Think about that in the context of having food, the thing that keeps you alive, the thing that you need, the energy for your body. And you attach and associate guilt with that thing. And it eats you alive. It gnaws at you. It's ringing around in your head on repeat. Guilt is a very powerful emotion. I even think sometimes we might believe, well, if I feel bad about it, if I kind of beat myself up, I try to use that negative motivation, I'll make a change. It'll be different next time. Y'all, That's not how it works. It's like guilt breeds guilt. Guilt is going to birth more guilt. Guilt doesn't resolve anything. Guilt can even lead to shame, right? That intrinsic, internal feeling. I'm wrong. Not what I did, but me, the person. Like there's a shift that can happen. Guilt can breed more guilt, but guilt can turn into shame. Ooh, just talking about this, I'm having like a physical reaction. Like my entire body, if you could see my posture, it's like shrinking down because that's what guilt does. And yet it is so commonly associated with certain foods, with things we eat, maybe even with how much you ate, any of those things. So, what do you do? How do you actually remove food guilt? You know you don't want to experience this. You know it leads to other behaviors, actions, thoughts that feel worse, more guilt, maybe shame. But how do you actually go about not feeling guilty? I always want to be honest. I always want to be upfront, and I'm going to do that right now. This is not a one and done. This is not a quick fix. It's unfortunate that it's not. If there was a way I could show you and give you right here, right now, that magic moment, right? Like take the wand and bippity boppity boo this sucker, I would absolutely give it to you. I don't want to hold that back. I don't want to not give you the key, except the key is understanding it takes time to undo. It takes time to unravel. It takes time to actually address maybe even each of the foods, the thoughts associated with it, the history you have with food guilt. But you can start somewhere. And I think it's important to start somewhere because of all the things we just established about food guilt. Nobody wants to experience this, pass this on, say these things out loud in front of our children or other people that we care about that maybe makes them question their own food choices. So, one place you can start is actually making that list. I was talking before, like, is it sugar, chips? What are the foods? Make a list. What are the foods you notice you experience food guilt? And for you, it might be a really long list or it might be a handful of things. I want to encourage you, be specific. Be as specific as you can. Is it cookies or is it like store-bought Oreo cookies? Is it, homemade cookies? I don't know. Maybe it's specifically ice cream. Well, what kind of ice cream? Is it Ben and Jerry's peanut butter ice cream? Be as specific as you can. And you might notice, well, now I'm listing every flavor of ice cream and every type of cookie. Okay, start there. Actually list out these foods. Notice how you feel even writing them down. And if you start noticing 3, 4, 7, 25 foods, I want you to know you're not alone. I was actually meeting with my group recently, and it was coming up from one of my clients how she's really, really done such amazing work here. The list of foods that was causing such guilt and stress and overwhelm was about 20 something. I want to say it was like 20 or 22. She's down to one food she's working through. This exercise can be really, really helpful and powerful. Now, my encouragement to you is going to be make the list. Then I want you to take a look at that list and pick the easiest food to address. Pick whatever it is. And maybe for you, it is Ben and Jerry's peanut butter ice cream. I don't know. I've just been having that lately. My husband's been buying it for me, and it's really, really good. I don't know why that's coming to mind. I don't actually experience any food guilt, but that's the food I'm going to go with. And you pick that food. And I want you actually, if it's within your means, within your budget, with accessibility, that you can actually get that food and enjoy that food. I want you to actually have access to that food and eat the food. If you can, grab some paper, a journal, your note section on your phone, and do some observations while you enjoy it. What do you notice? Like, do you enjoy this food? That's like number one question for me. Do you love it as much as you really believe you do? And maybe even there's a story there. Like, where does this guilt or feelings, belief about this food, this negative attachment you have to this food that causes the guilt, where does it come from? Do you have a source, a memory? Did you hear someone talk about this food? Or is it just categorized as, well, it has sugar, so it must be bad, so I feel guilty? Write it down. Any thoughts that come up, enjoy the food. And then I want you to actually have it again and notice what comes up for you. Notice the fears, the concerns, the joy of the taste or not. Is it something you really, really want? What else do you notice? And then I want you to have the food again. I want you to be able to experience this food. Notice the thoughts that come up. What my clients tend to find is to make peace with food, they have to have the food. Avoiding the food, having these negative thoughts and beliefs around this food actually keep that food in this guilt-ridden place. So I want you to, as best you can, actually have this food. It's something called systematic habituation. It's something we do within my group coaching, within my private coaching as well, where you actually have the food. And we do some really specific exercises around this. And this is part of it. Buying the food, knowing it's there, knowing you have access to it, and maybe even what words and terms are attached to it. And then have it again. Notice I've already said this 4 times. Actually, this is like a huge part of the shift for you when it comes to food guilt is systematically making it a habit, systematic habituation, exposure to the food. Now, I know it might feel a little unsafe. It might feel even a little unsteady to do this. So if you're like, I can't do this on my own, that is definitely where you can reach out for support to do this. I just mentioned my group coaching, my private coaching, we do this. But I also have something else. Like I want to be able to offer you so that you have like that support around food. I created this guide and I even added some audios from my group coaching, from the course that my clients have in my free guide. And it's talking about, eating at night without having the guilt. Oftentimes that guilt is coming at nighttime. The reason I created the guide the way I did is that's what I hear most often. It's not usually during the day, though sometimes that occurs. But there's a few factors, 4 I included actually in this free guide, that can really be affecting how you show up with food at night. And there's other reasons guilt shows up, right? Because we're feeling like we're overeating, right? We already talked about the types of food, but what about I feel guilty because I'm overeating? I address that in this guide as well. If you're looking to grab that, if you haven't already, I know several people because I talked about it on social media before I got sick and then disappeared from Instagram. But if you have not grabbed that, I want to just show you right into the show notes, show you into the show notes. No, just hop into the show notes, or you can head to theintuitiveatingmama.com/guide. That's it. Really simple. Put your name, your email. I'll send it over. And like I said, it actually has audios that are attached to each of the areas so you can start doing some of that work that my clients are doing with me. It might seem impossible or like really, really far away, but it is within reach to not experience food guilt anymore. I can tell you from personal experience, I didn't think it was a real thing. I'm like, sure, people, who don't experience food guilt must already be in a small body. It's just not true. When you really do make peace with food and there's an and here, and you honor your body and its needs for hunger, fullness, satisfaction. Ooh, there you go. When you're doing those things, the food guilt can go away. That was what my client was sharing about. The list was 20. She's down to 1. It's amazing and possible for you. Give this guide a go, download it, start listening to the audios, address each area. You might even find one area is more prevalent than another. You want to actually address the foods, right? The thoughts you have about these foods. Or maybe you really want to start with the feeling like you're overeating at night, the feeling of over consuming, and that's causing the guilt. Just hop to the one in the guide that feels like, I want to go here first, and then maybe I'll look at the other ones. There's no right or wrong way to address this, and you know yourself best. All right, I made it through the episode with only having to clear my throat and have some water a few times. Not too bad. I'm actually really impressed with myself right now for that. I hope this is helpful to give you a starting point to remove food guilt. and that the guide actually takes it even further. And then on top of that, be on the lookout and the listen, because group coaching will be opening up for spring. And this is the type of work that's possible. The client I shared is in my group, and she has gone from 20 foods on that list to one she's working through. It's freaking amazing. I can't wait. All right. I'll be back again next week, hopefully with even clearer throat, voice, and all of that. Talk to you then.